Welcome. We're glad you're here. Today, we're going to do the following. We're going to get your questions answered. We're going to help you learn more about the program. We're going to give you concrete tips on how to do a successful application, and we're going to let you have a better understanding of what we're seeking at the JSK Fellowships. So, if you have a passion for reimagining journalism, we want to help you be the best candidate you can be. That's our goal. If you're here at this webinar or you're listening later, we think you should apply. We encourage you to apply. So what we're going to do, please drop questions in the Q&A box. Take the opportunity to start that now if you have a burning question, so we can answer your questions a little later in the session. And don't be shy. If you have a question, you think, oh, maybe I shouldn't ask that. I bet you somebody else has that question too. So go ahead and put that in the box. Okay, last couple of housekeeping bits. Deadlines. All journalists need deadlines, and we have two. The international deadline for our fellowship application is December 4th at 1 o'clock Pacific time, and the US deadline is the 15th of January, 1 o'clock Pacific time. And we don't accept late applications, so don't wait till the last minute. Okay.
Yeah, we can tell.
They don't get in. We just don't accept them. And it's like, deadlines, we need to meet deadlines as journalists. Okay, let's begin.
Thank you again, everybody, for being here. It's a Monday morning, pre-election day, but you are here and ready. So thank you so much. And we have a lot of questions coming in. I'm going to combine some of them, and some of them we're going to answer individually if it's something very specific, but we want to stay with questions that are broad in general so that they benefit everybody. The first one, though, I'm going to start with, Dawn, is can people apply again?
Absolutely, yes. We are a program that believes in that persistence is a great journalism value, and we only have so many spots every year. So we have too many great people to fit the few spots that we have. So what I'd encourage is, and every year in a class, there are people who are in on their second application. So it's a very common thing for us to select someone who's applied before. But don't just dust off your old application and turn it in again. We want to know what's happened to you in the years since you applied. How has your thinking changed about journalism and about yourself and your career? What are things that are happening out in the world in the field that you want to reflect in your application? So do apply again, but give some thought to that application. So the answer is yes.
Great. And can you summarize what the application process review is like?
Yes. So we just opened on Friday, and we're very excited to see all of you applying. I'm looking forward to seeing your application. So the applications will come in. I mentioned the deadlines earlier. Once the applications are in hand, we have real people, not AI bots, reading all the applications. So we get help from our alumni, we get help from outside reviewers. So people are reading to get the very large pool down to a smaller pool of people that we think are going to be the best candidates. And then those are going to be reviewed by all the directors, and we will be then interviewing a small subset of people. So if you don't get an interview, don't think, well, why didn't I get an interview? Everybody gets an interview. Unfortunately, a small number of people get interviews, and then we will go through that process. And then we will, for the international fellows, we have a process of checking with international folks on the application. And then the US, we have a selection committee that comes and meets here in the spring to select the fellows with us. And then we will be offering fellowships in the spring.
Great. Thank you. All right. Another question is, and I love this because that means people are paying attention. The question is, in recent years, the JSK Fellowship Program has been dominated by individuals in managerial roles such as founders, co-founders, directors, editors, and CEOs. Let's see.
Does the program prioritize these leaders over everybody? Yes, and so our program is focused on leadership in journalism. We think that is the way for us to have the most impact in the field, is to have people who are taking a role, stepping up to the challenges of journalism. It's also true that we are interested in emerging leaders, so people who may not have a title yet, but have done leadership activities and have an initiative to make things better and maybe are seeking more of a role in leadership. So emerging leaders and leaders are who we're looking for.
So is the program about leadership or is it about journalism?
It's about leadership in journalism. That's really the case. Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's see. Second question, or another question. Do you only take fellows from newspapers, channels, and media startups? I could not find any journalists from a wire agency on the list of past fellows, especially from India.
We have had a number, so we are very interested in a diverse range of people and different kinds of news organizations that people come from. We've had a number of wire journalists from the Associated Press, from in fact the Wire in India. So no, it's not only focused on newspapers.
Great. Okay, Stanford. Stanford is associated with tech. If is it a problem if your project is not related to technology or AI?
No, it's not a problem. What innovation does not equal technology? There are many innovative leadership projects that you could work on or explore that are not related to technology. But it is true also that you want to be aware as a journalist of what is going on with AI and journalism and the technological changes that we're all facing. So while your project does not need to be focused on technology, it could be informed by it, but it doesn't have to be.
Okay. Can the project we propose be already underway, or should we propose something completely new?
We would suggest that you have already begun exploring this project. So it's probably not a good idea to say, I have this idea I think I want to explore, and you haven't done any groundwork, because what we want is you get to Stanford and you hit the ground running because you already talked to some people, tried some experiments, maybe some tiny experiments on how this might work, or what are issues that you care about, that you can come to the fellowship already having some background. So you can definitely have started something. That would be fine.
Yeah, and I tell people as well that yes, you want to have some background, but you also don't want to have the answer built into your project,
Right.
because we want you to come to Stanford to really be open, and as you're
Yes.
exposed to so many different things, you may realize that you actually have a different question than what you initially proposed. So if you bake in your answer, then you're just asking for a grant, and that's not what we do here.
You just brought up two great things I want to follow up on. So one is, if you already know the answer to your question, you don't need us. You can go do that by yourself. You're on that path. Go ahead. So we're here to open up your mindset, open up your mind to challenge your assumptions about that. And we have a whole workshop process for doing that. It really focuses, and it really does help people think, oh, wait, I actually, my question is actually more complicated than I thought, or it may be a little different than I thought, or it may be a lot different than I thought, which means it's fine during your year to change the focus of what you're exploring based on what you're experiencing at Stanford. And a number of people do that. I liken it to those journalists who have had a not great editor who made them do a story that was like a bad story. Sticking to a bad story idea, don't. Pick something else that is really you're passionate about and that you care about.
Perfect. All right, another question. What opportunities are available for young professionals in their early to mid 30s with at least 5 years in journalism within the JSK Fellowship?
Applying for a fellowship would be what I would say do. So uh, we have, I don't know if the question is about the age really, or the experience level, but fellows have been selected and been very successful from, you know, 29, 30 and on. So there's no specific, you do need 5 years experience. That is the minimum. But it's not like you need to have, 20 years in the business to do this fellowship.
Is that 5 years of just journalism? Could it be 5 years including, teaching, journalism, a combination?
needs to be 5 years in journalism, and it doesn't. You can't count your internships in that. It's professional journalism that you've had 5 years in that, so that really. And that's because you're going to get more out of this fellowship if you have some years of experience under your belt, and that you've had some things happen, you've seen some things in the world, and you have a better sense of now what you might want to tackle, rather than you just got out of college and you're like, okay, I need a fellowship to be back at college.
Good. And this is a follow-up to this, a little bit of what we also started talking about. Someone said, I listened to a recording of an earlier webinar. There was a focus on growth of leadership. I'm a reporter, and as such, I don't have formal leadership role, a formal leadership role in the organization, although perhaps leadership can be interpreted in a wider context. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, yeah. Wait, is there a final question? No?
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah. Definitely. I think a number of people come to the fellowship who um, want to make journalism better, and they have ideas and they've done things in their newsrooms without title. It certainly was the case for me when I was a reporter, and I thought about things and did things in newsrooms without a title, but I wanted journalism and my newsroom to be better. And so coming to the fellowship, then I had some great leadership training and got to step back and then also learn from my cohort. So all of that. So yes, you could be a reporter and apply, and it would just be, we want to know what you want to do and what kind of things you want to explore. Not a title necessarily, but what kind of leadership initiatives or experiences do you want to help journalism? Yes.
Okay, thank you. And people sometimes assume that leadership means a management role. And that's not the case all the time. Leaders are in different forms. You could be a leader in a newsroom without the title. And so it's about that kind of initiative, the kind of vision that you have, and the really the desire to make something better. And I
Yes.
think we can definitely do that right now, especially with all the challenges we're facing.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. Another one. There is often confusion about what reimagining journalism in the news industry means. Can you provide some concrete ideas on which metrics should be used to be selected?
Okay, so reimagining journalism it can be taken a number of different ways depending on where you sit. In our fellowship, we're thinking about that the status quo in journalism is not good enough, and things have been, going along in a certain way for decades that need to change. Everything from the diversity and demographics of a newsroom to being able to really tap into the community needs and not have top down telling the community what they need, but what listening to the community. So those are one of the couple of ways to reimagine journalism. For those of you who are interested in AI and what kind of technological changes can help or hurt journalism, that's a new way to reimagine journalism and to um, think about journalism as a way to lead efforts for democracy around the world and to not sit back. So there's a number of ways to do that. And we want to know what interests you and what do you bring to the party?
Now, we've had international journalists for many, many years since the
Yeah,
program practically started. Can you tell us a little bit about what international journalists bring to the table and what we look for there?
sure. So many times I would say international journalists are ahead of the US in innovation, in tapping into communities. And so there's a lot to learn. The US journalists have to learn from the international journalists on those fronts. We also are very interested in supporting journalists and press freedom around the world. And that is something we've also, it's been part of our program for decades. And that means helping journalists who are in situations, whether it be misinformation, whether it be physical repression, danger, all kinds of ways that they are under attack, that they are able to do independent journalism in a safe way. So you might come with a challenge you're trying to help solve for your country. So that's another way to do that. And just to say, the international fellows are bring so much to the JSK fellowships, and you teach the U.S. journalists a lot. Now, a lot of U.S. journalists have traveled, maybe have reported overseas, but they haven't spent 9 months learning from journalists from other countries, other cultures, and that's a really important part of our program. So we welcome your applications.
Now, sometimes journalists from other countries think that there is an issue of why their country has not had a fellow in a while or ever. Is there a process to that? Are we selecting countries that are on the no-fly list?
No fly list. So we've had over 80 countries represented in our fellows over the course of our fellowship. It's a big world. So we are always looking for places that we have not had a fellow. We are looking also to um, support fellows who are from parts of the world where something important is going on and could use a fellowship to help their journalism and their leadership. So, it's hard because it's a big world and we only have so many spots. So if you haven't seen a fellow from your country, please apply. It doesn't mean that there's nobody on the no country on the no fly list. We have had, as I said, 80 countries and we're looking for more.
And connected to that, there's a question here about the program featuring predominantly US fellows. Is that a priority, or does that mean, will we ever see a fellowship that has more international fellows than US fellows?
We've had a more 50-50 some years. Part of it is funding. We have our funding is focused a little bit more on the internet on the US, but we've also um, so I don't know if we would have more international. It could happen. We change up every year. It would depend on the mix of applications.
But it's a US fellowship, basically, right? Or would you say
Oh,
international?
no, it's a US and international fellowship.
Cool.
It's both.
All right. Okay, another question. I understand and respect that this isn't an academic position, but wondered if people who work in a hybrid academics journalistic practitioners would be eligible to apply.
So the percentage is key. So if you are someone who is mostly an academic and you write a few things on the side versus you are mostly a journalist and you teach a class once in a while, I think that's the difference. What we are a doing fellowship and not a studying fellowship, and so we want people who are coming to take action, to take initiative, to do things. And so that's why we are focused on journalists and not academics. So, but there certainly are journalists who teach a class occasionally, and that's fine.
Okay. Question here. I am a longtime freelance journalist and publish in outlets regularly, but currently working with a think tank. Does that make a difference in my application? And I think added to that, I think, there's always a question about freelancers and what would happen to their work if they actually came in to do a fellowship.
Okay, that's about 5 questions.
Okay.
Let me try. Let me try a couple of them. For one, sometimes people say also, I'm a freelancer, can I apply? First of all, yes, we've had lots of freelancers. So that's one thing. So if you're a freelancer, that's fine. You do want to have your work published somewhere and promoted somewhere. Um, if you are a freelancer and it is a choice of yours, if you're going to do the fellowship, to not be taking outside work during your 9 months, that is something that people need to figure out. But the benefit of being at the fellowship and all you're going to learn and the connections you're going to make for your network are, I think, really worth pausing your professional work so that you can have even more options for your professional work after your fellowship. The first question, which I'll circle back to about a think tank. So um, there are people who take a break and do something else for a little while. That used to be a major no-no, like, okay, you've gone to the dark side and you can never come back. It really depends on, well, what is a think tank? What are you doing? I think you want to make a case in any of these examples for why you would be a great fellow and what you would do with your year. And what would you do with it after? Where is your work going to be published and what kind of impact you're going to have?
Yeah, and I think that's also the point, right? We want people to stay in journalism
Yeah,
and we're investing in people who really want to do that. And
yeah.
so
Yeah, that's what we're about.
The industry isn't linear anymore. It's a zigzag.
Oh, no, it's yeah.
We've adapted to that, but we still want to focus on those who want to focus and stay in journalism.
Yeah, but keeping great people in journalism. I mean, if you're here watching this webinar, you're interested in in the future of journalism and your career, and we want to keep you in journalism.
Okay, another question here. Many impactful journalists possess significant accomplishments, but are not very eloquent speakers. How does the JSK selection process ensure that strong applications and past achievements are weighed fairly against interview performance?
Say the beginning of that question again. What was the first line?
Many impactful journalists
Okay.
journalists possess significant accomplishments,
Okay.
may not be eloquent speakers.
Oh, okay. Okay.
How does the JSK Fellowship selection process ensure that the strong application and past achievements are weighed fairly against an interview performance?
Okay. So first of all, do a great application because it's going to get you the interview. So spend some time really thinking about how you want to pose the exploration you want to do. Tell us about who you are. Why is this fellowship important to you in your career and your life? Why do you want to do it at Stanford? How is that going to help you? So do a great winning application to get the interview. And then interviews, people are nervous. We know that. I would say we have one of the more humane interview processes of all the fellowships. And that is if we're interviewing you, we want you to be a fellow and we want to know why. So you're at that point, we're going to give you every opportunity possible to shine. You do want to prepare. So you want to think about what are your best points that you want to be sure you make, that you can take deep breaths before the interview, whatever you need to do to feel calm. It's not the Spanish Inquisition. It's not, we're not trying to throw you off your game. We're trying to learn more about you. So ask other people who've done the interviews. I think you'll find that's the case.
But there are many, many applications that are very, very good. So that doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean you're going to get an interview, right?
No, but if you don't do a good one, you won't.
Good. I want to add to this in part because I know culturally speaking, I've had follow-up conversations with applicants who, when I talked to them about their application, they felt that they didn't want to brag, that they would come
Oh,
across as just, too showy. And the more that they felt they talked, the more they would seem like the thing was about them. And I said, no, no, this is your moment to actually talk about your wins, your celebrations, and also to talk about the things that you want to improve. But culturally speaking, it seems like culturally, we've been taught not to talk about ourselves this way, and journalists in general don't like to brag
right,
about themselves.
right.
How do
Yeah.
what do you suggest for someone?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think many people, whether it's culturally or as journalists, are not comfortable or not commonly in a situation where they're saying me, and here's what I did. But we can't know all the great things you did and who you are if you don't tell us. And in fact, there have been people I know who applied, and I see their application. I thought, wait, they didn't tell us that they did this amazingly creative project over here, or they started an initiative that made a big difference in that community. They didn't let us know those things. I've known about them, but they didn't put them in their application. So think about helping us. So help us to see you and to see all the great work you've done and to give us examples. That's the other piece, is not just saying I've done great work. Give us some really concrete examples of things you've done that you're proud of, that you think made a difference, to help us be able to understand who you are. So if one thing that I've had a couple fellows tell me they did in their application is when they wrote their application, they then had someone else read it who knows them well. And the other friend would say, "Wait, you didn't talk about this. You missed this point. You've not been celebrating all your wins. So have somebody else maybe read your application that knows you well, that can help you, remind you of some things you should put in. And also they can help proof your application too." Yeah.
Good. Now, we are at Stanford, and
Yes.
one of the questions here is, are there opportunities for fellows to collaborate with Stanford faculty or departments on projects related to journalism or media innovation?
Yes, yes, and yes. So at Stanford, which is a wonderfully interesting, intellectually stimulating campus, there's a lot of things going on, and there are things going on that can help journalism and that can be helped. Journalism can help as well. So um, things like there is a newish institute, the Human Centered AI Institute, that we have had some fellows involved with in the past on an informal or more formal way to talk to the researchers there. the There is the Brown Institute for Media Innovation, and we do collaborations with that institute. And sometimes some of the computer science students have worked with some of our fellows. There's more than 100 research centers and labs on the campus. So beyond classes, which are interesting and interesting and helpful, there's all these centers. And so fellows have found ways to collaborate because you're coming in with experience as a journalist and real world experience that is of interest to be. Oh, also the Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies, which is a umbrella institute of a number of centers on policy and real world impact around the world. So there have been fellows that have worked together with some researchers there as well. So yes, absolutely.
Good. Question here. Do we already have a specific menu of things we are interested in selecting this year?
No. I mean, it's not, that's a good question. We are, of course, interested in press freedom, democracy, um, leadership, all those things, but it's a broad menu. So you could think about something that you think is an urgent issue in journalism, and that might be different from one person to another. Um, so yes, those are all kinds of things that we're interested in doing.
Okay, I'm going to combine two questions in one. And this is about whether if you are not actively working as a journalist, but are in a journalism organization where you're doing training, or you're in a leadership role in journalism, but you're not actively producing content,
Yeah.
um, is that okay? And how does that affect the application?
Yes, it that would be fine. And what we would ask, and there's a part of the application that asks you, okay, if you're a manager or you're in a different role than producing journalism, talk about your wins. Talk about what have you done to help journalism and your organization be successful. What have you personally had a role in? And you can give us, a link to a project or documents that helped to create the project. So definitely the answer is yes.
Okay, this is specific to the application. And I think one of the things that's important to note is that we are always updating things, and this application is different than last year's application.
Mhm.
So do not just dust off your old application and attach those answers, just as Don suggested. But there is a question specifically about the use of AI tools such as ChatGPT or other chatbots in preparing your application. It says, the question is, have you used AI tools such as ChatGPT and other chatbots in preparing this application? Will using AI tools to assist my application negatively impact my chances?
So we want you to be transparent, and let us know if you do that and how. Um, so it's not a no to use AI, but we want to know how you used it, where and why. So it would be a common thing might be, for instance, you're writing your bio and you're trying to make sure it's coming across the way that you want. So you could use AI to help clarify your bio or something like that. So
Okay.
being transparent and letting us know is
Yeah.
key.
And I think where we've seen it that it didn't quite work was when international applicants used ChatGPT or or AI to write an application in English, but their English skills are not there, and we could see that in the actual interview. Do you have to have high proficiency in English for the fellowship?
Yes, you do not need to have perfect English, but you need to be proficient, highly proficient English, because at Stanford, to take advantage of the experience, to be contributing to the group, you need to be able to speak English. I will say it's been a sad couple of times when I've seen someone come to the interview and we read their application and it was great and their English was great, and then they get to the interview and they really struggled. Um, it's not again that you have to be perfect, but you need to be able to be pretty proficient. And that's a sad moment for us to think, oh no, this is too bad. So for those of you, and English is not the first language for a lot of people who are applying, but thinking about what you can do to improve your English before you get to the point of applying. So it may be that you need another year to ramp up, or think about how you want to improve your English to be proficient enough to apply.
Yeah, and we do know fellow candidates who come back with more English skills because they took more workshops, classes, and more practice. So,
We have definitely seen that. Yeah.
all right, staying on that space a little bit, how does the JSK Fellowship support cultural shocks and navigating conflicts that may arise within their cohort? What specific resources or guidance does the program offer to fellows to adapt to diverse perspectives, mitigate misunderstandings, and foster a collaborative environment across varying backgrounds?
That was a great question. We intentionally bring together a very diverse group of people because we think the solutions are better when you have diverse conversations, people bringing their experiences and their knowledge from all kinds of perspectives, life experiences, work challenges and experiences. And it does mean that we need to as a group be very respectful of each other and have respectful conversations. And that doesn't mean we don't challenge each other. So every class is different. We do a number of things from the start in our orientation, where we are together for almost 3 weeks, not only to learn about Stanford, but to learn about each other, our perspectives, how we communicate well, how to open your mind to new mindsets. So all of that, I think, helps build the cohort's ability to be honest with each other and respectful at the same time. We have, some pretty hard conversations sometimes if something's coming up. But it really is about mutual respect and a safe space. And we have fellows sign a code of conduct culture, JSK culture expectations and code of conduct document, which just talks about us as a community. And we are building a community, and what kind of community you want to build, and what our expectations are of you and you of us, and that we are not going to allow people to, be attacking other people in this group. So a lot of mutual learning, workshops, together time, which I think helps a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that's always very clear from the beginning. When the cohort meets, you just see this connection. That tendency to compete is gone. That tendency to be first is gone. It really becomes a true cohort.
Well, that just made me think, Alberto, too, about something that we do, and I think sometimes some other fellows should do a version of this that I really think helps, and that is what we call the JSK backstory. And that is every fellow has the opportunity, expectation, to have a conversation, a talk about their journalism history and what informed their life and their choice to be a journalist and the path they took. And so every fellow gives a talk, and it is such a eye-opening and bonding experience for the fellows to really know who these people are. And that is another way that we deal with cultural differences.
I have a couple of questions that have come in again that are repeating the amount of experience needed. Also, whether, what they need to do, can they apply again? What do they need to do different? Do you want to highlight again some of those things?
Sure. Yeah. Happy to say it again if maybe you joined us a little bit later. So first of all, yes, you can apply again, and we encourage repeat applications, not to dust off your old application and just send it in again, because we do change the application every year. And we hope and assume that you have changed over the year. Doesn't mean your idea needs to be totally different that you want to explore or what what you're passionate about. That doesn't need to change. But how have you been, impacted by the world, what's going on in the world of journalism in the year since you applied? How have your goals changed? What is happening that you see is already being done, maybe to help explore the question that you're thinking about working on as a fellow? And how might that change your application? So do apply again. I would say you could definitely talk to other fellows and talk about your idea. That might be helpful. What was the years of experience? Is
Yeah,
that a
years
question?
experience or
Yeah.
not in the role.
Yeah, so 5 years experience is needed. And the reason why is it's not a graduate degree program. So you're not going from, college to this degree kind of program because we're not a degree program. We're really time for you to step back and for any of us who've been a journalist to think about what are things that have happened in my career? What have I seen that I think needs to be better? So you need some time to work that through.
Great. And there are a couple of questions also asking about different paths of journalist. We're just going to recommend people visit our website and really dive into that. There are lots of examples of different paths our fellows have taken or things that they've done. And so, really dive into that. It answers a lot of questions, and that'll give you more insight. There's also a whole series of other videos that include similar Q&As, but also include alumni tidbits. So know that there's a lot more information. So if we don't get to all of your questions, there's available information there.
There's also we have fellows write multiple posts on Medium during their year to talk about what they're exploring, what they're finding, and you can find those Medium posts on our site to see what did fellows explore at Stanford and then what did they do with it after they left.
Great. Two more application questions that are related.
Mhm.
One, do you need to prepare recommendation letters?
Ah.
And how would you describe a bad application?
Okay, let's take the rec letters first. So good news, you don't need recommendation letters. That has sometimes been a hard thing for people to do a second application after they've already asked people to write letters, and they need to go back and ask for more letters. We've found and we've changed our application a few years ago to just require recommender names, contact information, and how does this person know you? These names we will not call all the recommenders, by the way. So if you don't get a call, they'll say, my recommenders weren't called. Maybe I'm not going to get an interview. That's not how it works. So we need to know people who know you that we can go to and interview if we decide we want to do that. So again, it's just 3 references. And these are professional references, by the way. This is not your beloved mother. I love my mom, but I wouldn't put her as a recommender. So professional references. And the second was what?
I forgot.
Something about,
But when you could apply again, references, and how do you describe a bad application?
a bad application. So many ways. Okay. Well, here's some things that are an immediately bad application and a turnoff for those of us reading. One, you don't use the application to tell us who you are. You don't use all the available space. You don't there. I can't remember if we have an optional question anymore, but sometimes people will just not answer the question because I don't know, why they didn't do that. So filling out the application fully in all the best ways you can to tell us who you are. So that's one. Two, doing it at the last minute, and this may be related to that. It's pretty clear to us if you have dashed this application off in the last, 6 hours before our deadline. It doesn't come off as thoughtful. You may not have used all the word count allowed. There's typos. That kind of thing is a big no for applications. I think also a bad application is just being too general and not giving us some specifics to be able to hang on to of things you've done in your life and things that you are wanting to explore. So give us some info and ammo to be able to understand what you want to do. Um, Well, a bad application is a late application, but we don't see those. They don't come through our system, so that's a really bad application.
And also, if there is a selfie video that is requested,
Mm.
someone asked if you could submit a video. That's where video is submitted. We're very specific on what size, and so telling us and submitting a video that's too large of a file or using that as an excuse as to why you didn't get your application in does not work. So you need
So
to make
yeah,
sure.
I'm gonna interrupt because I'm so excited about the selfie video. So it's the first thing I look at. So I open an application and I go, I mean, I, of course, read the beginning, who this person is, and get into the application. But then I love to watch the selfie video, and it is hard. I understand. I'm not a person. I'm not a video.
Nobody likes to watch themselves on video.
Oh no, yeah. It just let's just stipulate that it's hard to do that unless you're somebody who say you're on, you've been a broadcast journalist and you're used to being on camera. So it is not a video where we expect to have, high production quality video. It's you with your computer or your cell phone, but we just want to see you talk about why you want to do this. And it's 1 minute, and do good lighting so we can see you.
And sound.
And sound. Just make it easy for us to hear you, see you, to know why do you want to do this fellowship. And I do love those. So
Yeah, me too.
yeah.
Okay, we are down to the wire, so we have a few more questions we're going to answer. And again, if you have other questions, we do suggest that you dive into the website, look at Become a Fellow, look at other videos. There's a lot of detail there, and we're happy to answer some questions that you can submit there as well.
You can also send an email to JSK Fellowships at stanford.edu if we didn't get to your question.
Yeah, and that email address will be on the website as well. So
Yeah.
if you don't catch it, you can
Yeah.
look at it. Okay, this one. Do you accept people who've worked in making journalism better, but not necessarily on the editorial side? What about people working in product, audience, or finance?
So I would say yes, and you want to make the case for how you are helping journalism. But we have had definitely people who are CFOs. We've had people who were audience development folks. So yes, the answer is yes.
Great. Okay, what are the outcomes you expect from the grantees at the end? And are you looking for something measurable? Well, the
Okay.
word grantees already was wrong, right?
Yeah, well, you're a fellow. We're not giving grants. That's a really is a very important distinction. When I think about grants, we're giving grants to, people who give grants, foundations that give grants, like you're just working on some project. This is a fellowship. It's a cohort experience. It's very different from that. But what we are seeking is throughout the year, we want you to show your work and work on posts on Medium, come to everything we do, meet with your advisor. At the end, it really is you thinking about how you're going to take this fellowship and leverage it for your next step of your career. And we work with you on that.
Journalism career.
Your journalism career. Yes, exactly. Good.
Wonderful.
Okay. Ooh, we went
Yeah,
through.
we're at time.
Okay.
This it applies to both international and US. There's a perception or a question here, at least, that if a journalist has been picked from their city or their country, that means that someone from their country won't be picked the following year or their city. Is that the case?
It's not a firm, hard, fast rule. We probably, it is a big world, so we do want to mix it up, but we have had people from the same places in a second year. Maybe not, every year, but yes, that's definitely possible.
Cool. All right. And the last one is if they apply, they submit, when can they hear back about their application?
Okay, so I am going to have Pam, who I think is in the wings here, or Mary Beth, help me with this answer because I don't have the dates in front of me. Um, so if we don't get to the answer there, we will be posting things on our website about when we will hear back because it's an international process first and then a US process. So it's a bit of a wave of application review.
Yeah. And
So
we do send confirmation letters that informate your
yeah, yeah, we will be in touch if you apply, and I really hope you do. um, we really hope you do, that we would be in touch saying, we got your application, here's what's next. And we're keeping in touch with you all the time. So it's not like you apply and then it's a big black box and you never hear. So, and I see Pam Maples in the Slack is typing an answer for us. Mary Beth can answer. Okay. So Mary Beth, who is our Cracker Jack resources
Yeah.
and selection person, is gonna, we might be running out of time. Oop,
Hey, Dawn, since we're in a rush and we're almost at the end of this, why don't we have people send their questions to me? I'll answer
okay.
them
Okay.
at JSK Fellowships at stanford.edu.
Okay. Mary Beth. Yes, we always listen to Mary Beth. So I would just say what Mary Beth, do what Mary Beth says, which is write to Mary Beth, which is at our JSK Fellowships at Stanford.edu website or email, and then she'll get back to you if the question did not get answered.
And again, we're communicating with you along the way,
Yeah.
so you should
Yeah.
have a sense of what's happening. All right, well, let's review our tips again as we close out. Thank you again, everybody who joined in. We really appreciate it. Take it away, Don.
Okay, well, great. So quickly, don't procrastinate. Know why JSK is right for you. Be your authentic self. Know who we are, talk to alumni, beat the deadline. These are things I would print this out, do a screenshot, stick it up on your wall next to where your computer is. So when you're applying, that you have that. So just a final message, and that is don't miss this opportunity. This is your future self is going to thank you for applying. And if you're worried that you won't get in, and people do think, oh my God, I might not get in. Well, if you don't apply, you won't get in. So don't count yourself out too early. Give yourself a chance of a lifetime. Your application, if you do apply, and again, I hope you do, will be read carefully by real people. Alberto, Pam, me, Mary Beth, all of us and other alumni of our program are going to be reading your application, and we select a small number of people to interview. So just know that real people care about you and your application and your future. So you can follow this link, which I think is going to be set there in a minute. We are at JSK Stanford everywhere. Do email us if we didn't get to your question. Thank you so much for attending. It's been wonderful to have this conversation and hope that you are getting a lot from this webinar. We look forward to reading your application. So please join us.